Welcome to the Greatest Story Podcast with your hosts,
Zach
and myself, Josh. We are here to discuss and react to some of the greatest stories ever told. We will look at books, movies, video games, and all forms of storytelling to figure out what makes a good story and what are some of the greatest stories known to man.
Why don't you give us, Josh, a little bit of a teaser? What are we talking about this episode?
Yeah, this episode, we're going to be talking about what makes stories good for people, right? Like what do we gain as a society or even as like a species when we either read stories, watch stories, talk about stories, and why have humans since the dawn of time communicated through story? So speaking of stories from the dawn of time, what have you been watching recently or reading recently, Zach?
I think foremost on my mind is probably Dune 2. So if you remember from last episode on our trailer or our pilot,
So long
ago, we talked about a couple of our favorite stories, and I mentioned that Dune was up there, and one of the reasons for that is its recent release of Dune Part 2, which I'm seeing a second time. So if that tells you anything about how good I think it is.
Yeah. Regrettably, my wife and I still haven't made it out.
Yeah.
We're probably going to be the people that wait for streaming.
That's okay.
Which is real sad.
Yeah, well,
death to the theater.
We couldn't talk about that at a future episode. The movie theater industry and
It's
the
blockbuster ending.
Yeah. Oh, Blockbuster.
Yeah, that's a throwback.
Wow.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So, Josh, any good stories that you've thought about or read or watched?
Thought about?
Yeah.
Well, I need to go see Dune 2.
Okay, but that was mine, so you can't. Yeah.
I know, but I thought about it. I just haven't done it yet.
Okay.
Been watching The Bad Batch. So last episode I watched was we saw the team of clones, the Bad Batch, trying to evade the Empire, led by the most cool Giga Chad clone commander ever, Commander Wolf. And Rex talked him off the ledge and said, "You don't want to hunt down children," which is a really popular theme in Star Wars. It's just like...
That's true, actually.
Bad guys
Yeah.
like, you're a kid? We're going to throw you in jail.
Yeah. Yeah, probably should rethink that one, actually. Also, where was Rex when Anakin was hunting down children? I feel like...
He was on Mandalore.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. See, and that's why Anakin fell to the dark side.
And
Because...
Darth Maul threw a door through a hallway.
Yep.
Sorry for spoilers, I guess.
I mean, season
been a
7's
while.
been out for like 2 years, so
Yeah.
I think that counts. And, Revenge of the Sith has been out for like 12 years.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I don't know if the animated character, was in George Lucas's mind.
yeah, probably not.
2003
I don't know.
and 4.
I don't know. People say that he had everything planned out, so
And
rewriting history a little
I
bit.
also say I'm 6'3" and weigh 180 pounds.
That's all true, by the way, as I'm sitting next to him.
I'm 6'1.5".
Okay, thanks for clarifying. Yeah. I am not. Any story news that you're excited about?
Keeping with Star Wars, I think the massive one that I've seen recently was the Star Wars Acolyte trailer.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked about this yet, but our gig is to stay positive and try to figure out what makes stories great. And I am excited about this series because it's a time period that's not been explored, and I am anxious to see what Disney's able to do with the Star Wars franchise outside of the Skywalker family.
Yeah. I think I really am intrigued by the almost noir detective kind of Jedi as detectives, not as mindless generals. So I think that's an interesting twist, to be sure.
Some space kung fu.
Yeah, space kung fu is good. You know, I think we need more of that. So you should comment down below.
Do you like space kung fu?
Do you like space kung fu?
And or should...
Wow, that was smooth.
Did
you do that on purpose? And or...
It's all part of the secret plans to the Death Star.
To the Death Star 3.0.
Yeah, making the Greatest Story podcast.
Yes, 3.
Greatest Story
The
podcast.
the only story podcast.
From now it's a monopoly. I promise we're not just a Star Wars podcast.
No,
we promise
no.
you. So
It's just, yeah, anyway.
tossing that back to you,
Yeah.
can you get us out of Star Wars land? What other
I can.
news do we got?
So as we go to that question, why are stories good or beneficial for people?
Yeah.
I think that one of the first things that I want to look at is how stories help memory. Okay.
We talk about personal memory, cultural memory.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. What I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, certainly both.
Yeah, I think of like oral tradition, right? So even before cultures started writing things down, stories were not limited to writing.
Yeah. And then even before we have written alphabets, you have pictographs, hieroglyphs. And so people have been communicating through stories for generations, right? We still have, the creation myths in Mesopotamia. You have all of the Greek mythology handed down.
Yep, tons.
Philosophy. And so it just seems like even, especially, ancient cultures wanted to preserve ideas via stories.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think you see it on a personal level too, even with studying for tests, those students out there. I think how many times do you have to remember something and you make up a story to help you remember those details?
Or a little song.
Or a little song, yeah.
Songs
are stories too. They've got plot lines and characters and kind of a rhythm to them. Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you brought up memory, what do you think is the best example in your mind of stories aiding memory?
The best example of stories aiding memory.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. So one of the things that stands out to me is a lot of history. So many aspects of history I remember based on a narrative attached to them. So it's sometimes hard for people to remember random statistics and numbers.
Right.
But when people attach characters or plots or a narrative arc to those numbers are actually more memorable. Yeah. Right? How many people know the story of 300 Spartans? Well, if we were just trying to memorize 300 are a number of people that were there, that's a lot harder to memorize than the story of 300 epic dudes holding a pass against an innumerable foe. Yeah. That often,
for better or for worse, or remembering like super jack guys kicking
kicking people into wells. Well, this is Sparta. Yeah. So
I mean, I'm not biased or anything towards history, but in my opinion, and I say this because currently I'm working as a history teacher. In my opinion, it seems like real historians focus on the narrative because that is what's conveying ethics and morality for generations. And history serves as either a beacon towards something good or it serves as a warning and a beacon to stay away. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Because stories are a form of communication, right? You mentioned introducing ethics or guidelines or kind of ideas that we should follow. I think stories also help us process truth, and they can ask questions and even reveal answers in the way that those stories are told.
Yeah. So you brought up Lord of the Rings in our pilot episode as your favorite of all time stories, the GOAT. What is like one of those stories that bring up, how does Lord of the Rings as a story and an art bring up ethics that you remember?
Yeah, good. So I think that different characters can be imitated or even raise questions of what exactly is the good in life or in those stories. So for instance, a positive and a negative. You have a character like Sam, right? So Samwise Gamgee. Potatoes. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. But he often is attributed this kind of idea of servant-heartedness or friendship or companionship. He is kind of sticking with Frodo until the end, right? For Sam, it's less about, we got to throw this magical jewelry into a volcano. Right. And instead it's about, no, I got to get my buddy home. Right,
I'm gonna plot badly.
Yeah, exactly.
Got to throw the magical piece of jewelry in a really hot spot.
Well, otherwise it corrupts. Yeah.
I've also heard Sam is. Some people argue that he's one of the purest examples of healthy masculinity. I've heard that thrown.
Yeah,
around a
I
couple
think
times.
that's good too. I think you see that with someone like Aragorn as well.
Yeah,
Even Mary, I think, would be a good example.
that's true. But
Or
not-
Faramir.
not Pippin.
Nope. Well,
Fool of a Took.
a fool of a took. Fool of a took.
Faramir's great.
Faramir. Oh my goodness,
My-
amazing.
My
Yeah.
two favorite characters are Boromir and Faramir by far.
Yep.
And I think Boromir, because I think I understand him
Yeah.
and relate to him, and that serves as an ethical reminder to me that I can have good intentions
Yeah.
and I can have good desires.
Yep.
And I can kind of
Still do things bad.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can reconcile
Yep.
evil because the ends justify
the means. Yep. Which I think is part of where Boromir goes wrong, and kind of the center point of his story is, well, I've got to save my
gotta
people.
save my people.
Yeah. And then on the other hand, you have Saruman, who is a great character showing us the dangers of progress for progress's sake.
Yeah.
Right. So all about invention, all about domination, all about creativity, and yet uses these things to destroy both nature and the people around him.
And in the books, the Shire itself.
And the Shire itself.
Which I know it seems like in the movie there might even be some hints. I can't remember as well in the books. It seems like he even is saying, I'm choosing evil and I'm following the Dark Lord to preserve reality to some degree.
Yep. Yeah, like it will be better if I'm in charge versus everyone else.
Yeah.
I mean, that's his pitch to Gandalf is, hey, if you join me, we can overthrow Sauron and rule the galaxy as father and son.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Crazy. Did the Astari have lineages?
I don't think so.
That was a deep cut. If you get it, get it.
Yep.
If you don't, you don't.
Silmarillion, but,
Plus, Christopher Lee.
Oh, fantastic acting. Oh, my goodness.
But all that to say, like Boromir and Faramir,
Yep.
right? When I think of their characters, I remember ethics. I remember virtue.
Yeah.
And I remember the moral of the story is Boromir is tragic because he was a good man who died for redemption.
Yep.
Faramir is a good man who perseveres in the face of even familial oppression.
Yep.
To do what's right and being a man of integrity.
Yep.
So I guess to your point of stories as memory, right, I think of those characters and I think I need to be a man of integrity.
Yeah.
And Faramir reminds me of that.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think also stories are so beneficial because they help with, so this is a deep cut also.
Let's do it.
Okay. This is from an article from Harvard in 2019. No, I'm bringing up Harvard, okay? Because I like to have, outside input. Science is key. So this article from 2019 in Harvard talks about the uptake problem. So if you're ever slow on the uptake, have you heard that phrase? Yeah. So this is the idea that something is good or beneficial, but there's still a ton of people who struggle to actually put that into practice.
Sure.
And stories help us actually put those good things that we know intellectually are good, but we still struggle to put that into practice.
Is that because our imagination can visualize and see, this fictitious character, hypothetical moral quandary, this is how he interacts with that, and we see, good choice, good reaction, bad choice, bad reaction?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of putting a specific and explicit example to something that is still kind of up in the theory realm of our fog and imagination.
As the kids would say, bringing that down to earth.
That's right. Bring it down to earth.
We kind of, we really went from memory.
Yeah, that was really good.
So what else do stories do, Zach? What else can they help us with?
I think stories also, so moving away from content communication, because obviously stories do communicate truth, questions, answers, but they also form connections. And I think that's part of what stories do for people in a good or a beneficial sense, is they form emotional connections. Mm-hmm. And they form relational connections between creators, authors, the audience, and also between audience members themselves.
You said this and, I read the notes, but just now thinking, I think stories are the one thing that we could probably both point to and say, this is what bonded us in friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about random stories at work lunches.
Yep.
And then, honestly, that's how this whole concept of a podcast came out, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Because we talk about deep things about stories, and heck, why not record ourselves and put it on the interwebs?
That's right. Open us up to public shame and humiliation.
That was dark. Pull it back. Anyways, but yeah, so like stories is relational connection, like it builds friendships.
Yeah. One of the best examples I have of this is whenever you go to a movie theater. So, I mean, we talked about the death of movie theaters, but
they are alive.
But they are alive, and they have a pulse, even if it's faint.
Another Star Wars quote.
I think we should bring it back, right? Yeah. I think we should not abandon the movie theater industry.
And we should take Anakin Skywalker's burning hulk of a physical body
and turn it into a robot and
more machine than man.
So that never mind. Okay, so but
we're gonna go for it.
Go for it. But one of the best examples I have of this is people in an audience, right? Why do you go to a movie theater instead of just streaming at home? Why do you sit in the seat instead of sitting on your comfy couch?
It's a holiday. It's like an event.
Exactly. It's an event, and you share it with people.
Yeah.
Right? So many times when I was younger, my dad and I would organize these like giant movie nights, and we would just invite as many people as we could, and we would all go to the theater together. Maybe we'd like get lunch or something or dinner beforehand, and we would all go see the same movie at the same time. And then we wouldn't just leave. We would stand in the lobby and talk about whatever it is we just experienced.
Yeah.
So everybody gives a rating, ranks it on a tier list, and kind of shares their favorite parts. And it's in doing that you're recapping and experiencing that connection between each other even more.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think my fraternity, we did movie nights too. And some of my favorite memories are talking about movies. Like probably like one of the goofiest ones is we watched Starship Troopers. Just a crap movie. Like it's hilariously bad.
Yep.
Like very simple plot. But it really brought us together because then we could laugh about it, joke about it, and all say, we're doing our part. Get it?
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
But yeah. Movies are events because they bring people together.
Yep.
You could talk about it, or I guess you can watch it by yourself. But even then, if I watch something by myself, I end up either wanting to text you or telling my wife or watching it with my wife. So even then, I move past isolation. I don't want to actually just consume a story by myself.
Right. Yeah. I don't think stories are meant for individuals. I think stories are meant for people. Yeah. As a whole.
Which, going back to memory, right? All these ancient stories and cultures, like, thinking about even the Bible, thinking about Greek mythology, thinking about, Asiatic wisdom things. And you take all these stories and they're passing them on through the generations, saying we hope like our progeny are going to learn from what we've learned, and we're going to tell them that through story.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Kind of taking those same ideas and pushing them forward.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I also wonder, so we've covered communication and connection, right? We've bounced around in that. But do you think stories can actually help us find answers to the questions that we deal with on a daily life?
Yeah, I think they can. I think that's part of what stories do, is they're not just enjoyment. They're not just consumed for some type of fun or entertainment. I think stories do that, but I think that stories, much like philosophy as a discipline, so I'm not trying to bore anyone who doesn't like philosophy out there.
You better go to Plato?
No, I'm not going to go to Plato, okay?
Not the putty Plato.
Not the putty
but
Plato.
The Greek Plato.
Yeah, which both smell the same.
What?
So.
I've never heard that. They both come out of caves.
They both come out of caves. But I think that stories help ask those questions and get us thinking. So even if they don't present the answers to us, even the fact of presenting the question forces you to think through it, which is then good and beneficial.
Right. Like, we've been riffing off of Star Wars, so we jump back in, right? Episode 3 is my favorite out of the original 6. Question is, if I was in Obi-Wan's shoes, would I be as handsome as Ewan McGregor?
Nope. The answer is no. Yeah.
I shamelessly will say that.
Yeah.
But in reality, right, asking if my whole world is falling apart and I have to go against, my best friend or my brother or whatever, son figure, whatever you're going to say the Anakin Obi-Wan relationship is. am I willing to do what's right at tremendous cost?
Yeah.
And it makes you, as a viewer, a consumer, think about that.
Yeah.
Or conversely, like, am I willing to sell my soul to get what I want? If you put yourself in Hayden Christensen's shoes, which also a tremendously handsome actor.
Yeah.
I felt like if we throw you in a bone, we gotta throw
exactly.
Hayden in a bone.
Yeah.
Because we know them personally, obviously. Right?
Shout out
but still, like and subscribe for more content. In one day, maybe we can have an interview of you and McGregor.
Oh, man.
We need at least 5 million of you. Probably. Maybe more. Anyways, but you put yourself in Anakin's shoes. Like, are you willing to actually sell your soul? Like Yoda says, what does he say? You got to be willing to give up everything you're afraid to lose.
Yep.
And naturally, I sit there and I'm like, what am I afraid to lose? Am I willing to give that up for the better good?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yep.
You got to wrestle with that.
Yeah. I know. And I think that's one of the things that stories do is they grow. Good stories, I should say, grow with the understanding of the viewer or the listener or whatever medium it's through, right? So, I'm 10 and to take Revenge of the Sith, right? Backflips and lightsaber fights are cool.
Super sick.
And that is amazing, right? And then I get to 12 and I'm like, wow, it's kind of rough that he like betrayed his friend like that. And then I get a little bit older and I'm like, man, there's even more questions to think about as to people that I love or secret relationships or, and then, you get to like your 26th time watching it and you're like, are the Jedi the real villains? I don't know.
We're not going to do this. We're not going down. You're going down a path I cannot follow. You're breaking my heart. I experienced this. I got married, right? And I don't know. You got married too.
I did. Did you phrase that as a question?
No.
Yeah. I don't know if you got
Zach
married.
Zach is also married.
I am separately.
Yeah, not at the same time or place.
I'm cutting that. That's weird.
Or we could leave it. But I watched Star Wars 3 in the story of thinking, like, what am I willing to do for my wife? And, like, thinking about the times I've gotten the most afraid has been about, like, being worried about either, like, in episode 2, he's worried about his mom.
Yep.
I get worried about my parents.
Yep.
I get worried about my wife. And then I have to, like, wonder, like, if I choose fear, am I creating the very thing I'm afraid of?
Yeah.
And like, Star Wars is a goofy movie.
Yeah.
All of them are. But they ask, like, if they treat the audience with respect, some of them. We're not there yet.
Yep.
And when you treat your audience with respect, you actually get them to engage with some pretty deep, profound
questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that leads into the emotional connection, right? I mean, as you're processing, I think one of the things that stories do is as you're processing these deep questions of life, even if you're doing it subconsciously, right? We don't always sit down to a movie or a book and we're like, let me think about the purpose of life. But I think that's happening.
It depends who you are.
That's true. I'm speaking generally. I do that frequently.
Yeah, I don't think my little brothers do that.
Right. So it just depends. But even if you're not doing that intentionally, you're still wrestling with the emotional experience that the story is presenting you with, and that can help you kind of unlock your own emotions, right? And I think that does lend to maturity, which is also a good and beneficial thing, right? So, right? Yeah. So, I mean, so when I was younger, I would refuse to watch sad movies.
Okay.
Because I was not in tune with my emotions, and so I didn't want to do anything that would make me sad.
You're afraid you're going to open Pandora's box.
Exactly. So as I've gotten older and I've tried to have a more healthy understanding of emotions, even sadness.
Avoid sad movies.
No, I'm okay with sad movies now. Yeah. Because of stories, right? Because of stories. They help me over time to process.
Right? Like, I'm not a clownfish. I might be a clown, but I'm not a clownfish. But you watch Finding Nemo and you think, wow, I'm going to have to wrestle with profound loss one day. And it's a stinking
It's a fish movie. Yeah, it's about fish. It's literally about fish. And if you get through the first 10 minutes and you're not like sobbing your eyes out, I'm pretty sure you're a heartless, just terrible person.
Or you need a counselor.
Yeah, that's probably true too.
Or both. Maybe extras.
Maybe.
You extra need a counselor.
Yeah.
Or Up's like that too.
Oh, yeah, Up.
I mean,
if you want to talk about good storytelling,
Up's a good movie.
Just the first, 15 minents of Up. You don't even have to watch the whole movie. Just
good compact.
I don't even think they have words. It's just
song.
And, yep.
which one day we'll talk about. Can music tell a
Music
story?
as stories. Yeah.
But that day is not today.
That day is not today.
This day we fight.
This day we talk about stories being good.
Okay. Right. And so I think we've given pseudo evidence, but we've definitely talked a lot about how stories communicate memory culturally.
Yep.
How they can be good conduits for ethics that transcend.
Yeah.
We've talked about how they're good in community, right? But do you think it's an effective vehicle for these things? Like when you think about the masses, can you teach, like how big of a group do you think you can teach about a specific moral or ethic via storytelling?
Yeah, I think the group of people or the audience is limitless. So the way that we communicate with stories affects so many different people, and it doesn't always affect people the same way. You might try to communicate some type of ethic or moral or some type of thing that people should do, and everybody might interact with that in a different way. Not all people might subscribe to that idea, although you should subscribe to this podcast.
Smooth.
We're also on YouTube. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. But not all people might agree to do that, but we see the effects of stories on variety of people, right? Whether it's a political narrative, which affects a ton of people, whether it's a historical narrative, which affects everybody who reads that in the future, whether it's a brand narrative. I mean, even advertising is telling you a story. It's raising a question for you that it's going to attempt to answer, right? Yeah. In order to be happy, you need a new pack of Oreos. Pretty sure that's how the advertising industry works.
That is like you are less than or you are lacking.
Yeah, exactly.
And regrettably, sometimes that works on me.
It works on me frequently. Right. Yeah, I have tons of Oreos.
Like how often though do you see like a McDonald's commercial and like, wow, I would have a healthier life and I'd be happier. And then you go to McDonald's, well, then you order and you're like, wait a second.
Yep.
That was nothing like as advertised.
Okay, but we are supposed to say positive. So
we are.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
Which, you can take that and think being in community and cooking your own food, that's just me trying so hard. You take your food in your community and you work together and you build something good that's wholesome. Yeah. And it might take a little more time than just like prepackaged goods.
That's true. That's true. Are you trying to say that cooking is a story?
I don't know if I'm prepared to put my like banner behind that.
Yeah. I think there's thought to be had there.
I think cooking can complement storytelling.
Yeah.
I think it can be a good prop or aid.
Yeah.
I don't know if the process itself is a story or else it'd be pretty tragic.
What's interesting, so this is a side note, but we're talking about food. So even in other cultures, right? So think of Jewish culture, think of Passover, which is itself, it's not just kind of a festival, but it's also a story that they're rehearsing. That's and there's true. Food elements that go along with that story. As you're telling the story, there's different food that you eat or taste or drink. And so I think that's kind of backing up, right? The food itself is not the story, but it is a prop. It is an aid in that storytelling.
Or if you think about American holiday of Thanksgiving.
What is Thanksgiving without turkey, you foolish ham people?
Sugar hams. My family calls it city ham. I like country ham and I like city ham, but that sugar glaze is pretty good. But all that
but it's not for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is for turkey. Sure, Christmas. Christmas. You can have a Christmas ham, an Easter ham.
Same thing.
You can have
those holidays with those big feasts. They communicate something. About values that we have as a society.
That's right.
And I'm not going to get into Thanksgiving right now, but regardless.
But that's evidence. We have pseudo evidence and real evidence.
Yeah. So we look at all this together, Zach.
Yep.
Right. And so let's tie it together. Why are stories good?
I don't know.
Why are stories beneficial for society?
So stories are good or beneficial because of the community aspect, the memory aspect, the ethical aspect, so pushing things forward to future generations, communicating different questions and answers, and also helping us work through emotional experiences and process life.
I agree.
Okay.
But I mean,
they're also entertaining.
There is something good.
I think I think entertainment is good, right?
Pursuing art.
Yeah, things are not beautiful because they serve a function.
Right.
I think that things can be beautiful, and that is their function.
And also, we've discussed stories are both. I mean, we're now assuming stories are beautiful, but we've just covered how they serve a function.
I mean, we're doing a podcast searching for the greatest stories, so I'm gonna assume that our presupposition is that stories are beautiful. So
yes.
So
I guess to recap, right? Stories are beneficial because they are an excellent vehicle of communicating ethics and morality to a general populace.
Yep.
And it's packaged in a way where it doesn't make you have an existential crisis, but it does promote deep thought regarding emotions, regarding conflicts in society, regarding the general idea and notion of truth, all the while keeping you entertained in being an excellent art form.
Yeah, absolutely. So well, you made it.
We did make it.
Yep.
And they made it. Who's they? We don't know.
Only you know.
Yeah. But you can make yourself known. If you've liked this podcast, subscribe for more. And hey, we're small. We're growing. And so if you'd like to see more stuff, you can reach us at thegreateststorypodcast@gmail.com. We're happy for suggestions. You maybe even suggest a quote we should use. We might start using those quotes in stories. You got some ideas about branding, or if you would like to order a hat or something like that one day, drop us a line. Let us know.
Or if there's a topic you want us to talk about in the future.
Oh, for sure.
Favorite story of yours.
Yeah.
Send us an email, greateststorypodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Patreon at The Greatest Story Podcast. You can also find us on YouTube, The Greatest Story Podcast.
You can also comment on YouTube.
YouTube. Yep. We want to know about your space kung fu.
Space kung fu, yeah. Wow, dude. Full arc.
Full arc.
Back to the acolyte.
Yep.
Well, so what are we doing next time? What are we talking about next time, Zach?
Next time, we're going to talk about why people are drawn to stories. So not just why are stories good, but we're going to build on that and talk about why do we like them? Why is it that cultures have used them for so many years? Why is it that we keep coming back to the same books or the same movies or the same songs? So yeah, join us next time to talk about why are we drawn to stories.
Good morning, Vietnam. Sorry, I saw an ad. We're going to have to cut this part out now.
No, you're good.
Okay, cool.
We can just keep it in.
Hey, it's casual open anyways.
Casual open.
We're good.